Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another mock interview. Today we are with Miss Geetika, and I hope you enjoyed this mock interview. Miss Geetika, welcome to Chevening mock interview. I wish you best of luck and success, and please let me know whenever you are ready. We can start this mock interview.
Yes, we can start.
Very good. So my name is Sirat Haidari. I am a Chevening alumni and I'm conducting today's interview. During this interview, if you don't understand any of my questions or anything seems vague to you, you can interrupt me and ask me to repeat my question or simply rephrase it in simpler words. Before wasting further time, Ms. Geetika, please start the mock interview with introducing yourself very shortly.
Right. My name is Geetika Mantri and I'm a journalist in India. I grew up in a lot of different cities, having lived in 7 of them in India, and I've studied political science and mass communication. I've also grown up reading and listening to a lot of stories, which I guess is where my interest in journalism came from. I always found myself, even while watching films and reading books, sort of batting for the underdog, which I guess in a very primitive way led me towards human rights issues. And as a journalist in the last 6 years, I have developed an expertise in writing about gender, sexual violence, child sexual abuse, mental health, and LGBTQIA issues, and a few other human rights issues.
Excellent. That's very good. Can you please explain your educational background? How did you started? Why you started like studying journalism or political science? And can you please give information exactly about your education, please?
Yes, for sure. So I studied political science. It started actually in a funny way. While I was in school and I was in class 11 and 12, I I did not want to take up hard sciences and mathematics, which was quite different from the background that I come from. Excuse me, where my parents are both engineers, but I guess I decided to walk the path less taken, and I decided to take up the social sciences, which of course, blew my mind. I realized that there is so much knowledge and here, and I developed an interest, which is what led me to study political science. When I was looking for courses for my undergraduation at Delhi University, it was there were some aspects of political science which really caught my fancy. This included political thought, this included aspects of history, this included aspects of analysis of historical revolutions, and basically a lot of pathways to make systemic change. And that is why I decided to study political science, because I wanted to form a very solid academic grounding in what leads to change, what can we learn from history, and what can we take away and build on for the future. And while studying political science, and in fact all throughout my life, I have really loved to write. And as I said earlier, I have loved stories. So in in an almost naive way, I thought, okay, I want to write, I want to tell stories, so why not journalism? And that's what led me to study mass communication. Of course, when I studied it and I realized there's a lot more to it than simply writing, um, it was again an eye opener for me. When I was studying mass communication at Symbiosis International University, I realized what are the elements that make a newsroom tick. It involves, of course, people who are journalists, but also it involves having a very very real understanding of what the ground realities are and how they're different from what they're supposed to be. And I think is what um, that is what inspired me the most, to sort of delve into that, and be a channel for truth and for bringing some of these oppressed voices to the fore. Yeah.
Excellent, very good. So you are, it seems that you are very much into reading and writing. Normally, can you like show us or demonstrate how many of your articles or stories or research papers are published and where?
Yes. So I'll begin with my most recent and current publications, which like I said, I've been working with the News Minute for the last 6 years. The News Minute is an Indian news website which has about 8 million unique readers, and it focuses on the 5 South Indian states. So it subverts the mainstream discourse, which is more North India focused. So I've been working here for 6 years, and I have written close to 900 in total articles and features, and about 150 of them have been on sexual and gender-based violence, which includes 50 on child sexual abuse alone. And a lot of my writing is long form, which means that it is um, upwards of 1600 to 2000 words, which means that it requires a lot more in-depth reporting. It requires a lot more focused interviews. It's not a 500-word piece saying ABC happened. It goes into the social and structural context of the issues that I cover, which are, like I said, mental health, child sexual abuse, gender. So those are my publications at the News Minute. Prior to this, I have interned with 2 leading media organizations as well. One is Catch News and one is Outlook. Outlook is a very well-known national political magazine. I published a few short interviews there while I was pursuing my master's in mass communication. And Catch News was my second internship during the same course. There, I mostly focused on features, news features, covering breaking news, and writing a lot of explanatory articles, which required a lot of research and context setting.
Excellent, that's very good. So reading and writing, can you please tell me what were the 2-3 last books you have read, maybe this year or this couple of years?
Okay, so I do read a lot of fiction, and some of my favorite books are fiction because I think they delve into human behavior while also leaving room for imagination, which is what I like to do. And it also gives me an escape from the reality sometimes that I'm constantly confronted with as a journalist. So it helps me in keeping my own mental health intact. So the books that I've really enjoyed reading in like the last year, probably my favorite is one called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. It is about a woman who decides to end her life but gets caught in a sort of in between and gets to live many alternate lives, and what she learns from each and how it ultimately tells us the lesson that there are a lot of what ifs in life, but there is just one life that you have, and that is what matters. And ultimately that is a lesson that I want to reiterating to myself. There are a lot of times that we make mistakes. We think we could have done this a certain way. A relationship could have gone this way. Maybe if I did this, my work performance would be better. But you can't change the past. So ultimately, then it's about rising up from a challenge, learning from failures, and moving forward and making the best of what I have. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let's get back to your career. Can you please tell me when did you started your career, right after your undergraduate or your master's, and where did you started, and how many places are you working in professional and volunteer capacities?
Sure. I joined the News Minute right after my master's in mass communication, which was in April 2016. And I've been here ever since, which means that um, I have had a lot of opportunity to make the organization grow, set a lot of precedent. And the News Minute was only 2 years old when I joined it, which gave me a lot of room and a blank canvas of sorts to set a precedent for how issues like gender and mental health are covered there. Now we're talking about more sensitive reporting, more about what are the ethics of journalism and so on. But when I joined, I did not have these conversations going to such an extent. So it required for me to speak to a lot of people, including policy experts, including people in the development sector, who were interacting more closely with people on the ground and who could tell me how media impacts social understanding and impacts beneficiaries and survivors. So, taking from those conversations, I was able to come up with um, certain guidelines and certain ways of conducting interviews, developing an organizational culture, and also writing these stories. So I was able to do that. And today, the News Minute is known for its sensitive gender and mental health coverage.
That's great. So do you have any leadership position at the current place that you work? And do you have any employees working under your supervision?
I currently work as an associate editor at the News Minute. Before this, I held the positions of senior editor, senior reporter, and reporter. So I've been promoted 4 times. And in terms of people reporting to me, it's not as rigid a structure. So because my expertise lies in gender and sexual violence and mental health and so on, I end up overseeing those sorts of stories. I end up mentoring reporters on them, and I am the person whom they come to when they want to get perspectives, when they want to figure out how they should write a story, who they should speak to, what are the elements that should be there and it's missing. So in that sense, the News Minute is an organization which has over 50 people now. And when it comes to doing these stories or producing these sorts of videos, they do come to me. So yeah, it's not exactly a reporting sort of structure, but I am the go-to person for these things.
So are you a leader there, or are you a boss or a manager?
I don a lot of hats at the News Minute. I write, I edit, I mentor, and I also oversee a bunch of things. So to answer your question, I would say I'm a leader. I don't have the title of an editor-in-chief, which is an out-and-out boss of a media organization that you can say. I am not that, but I am one of the most senior people at the News Minute. And I do lead by example, and my leadership style is that of mentoring. It is that of setting the tone to do certain things.
Excellent. So do you see any difference between a leader and a manager? And if you see, what are they?
Yes. A manager, I believe, is somebody who ensures that if there's a checklist with 5 things and there are 10 people who are responsible for them, a manager ensures that those things are done. I think a leader goes a step ahead, or several steps ahead, I would say. A leader has the additional responsibility to sort of influence how things are done. I believe that leaders are not just people who are followed by a certain number of people. I think there are also people who influence how certain stories are told. And that is certainly what I have done in my career so far. Um, for example, I remember that when I joined, I found that there was not a lot of literature when it came to nuanced reporting on child sexual abuse. So immediately a year after I joined in 2017, I worked with a colleague to do three in-depth stories, which was a series on child sexual abuse, which looked at everything from what happens to survivors in courtrooms, what happens to them after the media spotlight dies down, but the cases drag on for years, and what happens when the media covers these issues in an insensitive way. It propagates the same sort of prejudices on sexual violence that perpetuate it also. So um, and I think that was the beginning of my own delving into the issue of child sexual abuse. Since then, I have written nearly 50 stories, which go look at everything from the dynamics and the social structures that enable violence and sexual violence against children, to the proliferation of child pornography, and online safety of kids. And one of my stories in that I had done on the very underreported issue of male child sexual abuse in India won the Ladli Award for media for gender sensitivity in 2020 also.
Excellent. So I
I
see
can't
you
hear
have been
you.
involved in a lot of activities, especially in the at the News Minute. So what about the networks? How many networking platforms or networks are you involved? And please explain, what does effective networking mean to you? And how do you maintain your relationship in these networks, and how do you broaden it?
Right. So I would say that I am involved mainly in two kinds of networks. One is the media network itself, which is other journalists, people from other organizations, or people with similar interests to mine, which is a lot of human rights and gender issues. And the second sort of network is our people who are the other stakeholders, for example, policy experts, researchers, academics, who are engaging with these issues in a much more sustained manner. And I of course, I have gotten in touch with them for getting diverse voices for my stories, but I have inculcated relationships with them by keeping in touch with them. And by keeping in touch, I don't just mean asking a hi or how are you, because a lot of time professional relationships don't necessarily work that way. It's more of a give and take both. It's not just take and not give. So while they have been helpful in helping me understand the nuances and the structures that enable certain social problems, what I have done in on my part is that I have ensured that they know that I am somebody who is committed to these causes. How I have done that is, sometimes I just speak to people like lawyers, for example, to understand legalese, to understand the legal aspects and how that affects policy, how that interacts with social realities. And that inculcates a trust in them. They know that I am somebody who is sensitive to these things. And sometimes that it works, it's mutually beneficial. Sometimes it leads to them giving me tips and leads for certain stories, and for them it is a way to broadcast something through the media. um, for example, like I have been covering a lot of gender issues and child sexual abuse issues recently, just last week, there was a handbook released for support persons in child sexual abuse cases in India. It was by UNICEF and and a couple of more organizations working in India. I was one of the first people to get the invites for that. And not only did I attend it, even though it wasn't, I'm not a support person, I'm a journalist at this point of time. I attended it. I learned a lot from it in terms of what are the roles of a support person. And I also wrote a story about it, which means that other support persons in India can now access my story, download the handbook. It leads to a larger domino effect of setting up guidelines and setting up the best practices for something by broadcasting it.
Okay, very good. So let's get to like the Chevening network. So having your networks and these experiences, once you are in the UK and you see that Chevening also has a very huge network of current and also alumni applicants. What will you bring to the Chevening network, to the current one and to the alumni?
Right. I think I'm somebody who has a lot of an intersectional understanding of some of the most pressing developmental issues in India. Um, in my work, for example, I have demonstrated it so when I say I cover gender and mental health, it doesn't mean I cover them separately all the time. A lot of times these intersect. So it could be a story about in vitro fertilization in India, but how does that affect a woman's mental health, to put her body through that, deal with the social pressures of having to conceive biologically? Having done these stories, which which have a lot of different elements, the intersectional understanding that I have developed is what I will bring to the Chevening community and to the cohort of my Master of Public Policy degree. I have a breadth of knowledge, and what I hope to gain in the next year is a depth so that I can engage with gender issues much more deeply. I have already, in the process of applications, got in touch with a few Chevening alumni, and I see so much potential for collaboration and a symbiotic sort of relationship to have a larger scale impact on the development and propagation of gender justice. So, for example, one of the alumni I'm speaking to has started a platform which aims to inculcate more political awareness among young people in India. Uh, a lot of them tend to be women, which is again in an intersection of politics and gender. When women are not as aware of their political rights, they are less likely to exercise them. They are less likely to be participatory in democracy, and therefore their voices are less likely to be heard as well. So when we talk about the larger Chevening alumni, the Chevening community, and what I bring and what I get from them, it is exactly this. It is an intersectional understanding of development issues. It is opportunities for collaboration, idea sharing, and knowledge sharing, and contributing to the overall development and the overall progress of the social causes that many of us believe in. One of them, like for me, that is gender justice, but it could be done in a lot of different ways, which is where I see collaboration happening with many other Chevening alumni.
Thank you. So you are, as our interview is going on now, you are in the UK. So please explain me your courses. What courses have you chosen, and which universities, and why? Go step by step. Your first choice, second, and third.
Right. So I have chosen the Master of Public Policy course. My first preference is Oxford, from whom I already have a conditional offer. And my second preference is the London School of Economics and Political Science. And my third choice is the Master in Public Administration from UCL. I chose these courses because I think they provide a very ideal sort of amalgamation of theoretical as well as practical aspects of study. At this point in my life and my career, where I do have a master's degree, I don't necessarily want to focus on something that is purely academic, because I want to work with people. I want to work with beneficiaries at this point. So going to Oxford, for example, to the Blavatnik School of Education, not only gives me the opportunity to network and learn from people from all over the world who are probably trying to solve very similar problems to the to the one I am trying to solve in my country, which is gender injustice. I get to learn from them about what are the sort of strategies that have worked in their countries, see if they have applicability to mine. And I am also very keen on understanding what are some of the interventions that have been proposed in their countries. What are some of the interventions that we can come up in our own classes through group assignments and things like that, which will help me hit the ground running once I come back to India and start working on designing intervention programs and doing advocacy for gender justice and engaging more deeply with gender policy, which is why the UK also is an ideal destination, not only because it's a melting pot of cultures, and of course there is the prestige of going to Oxford, and but also because the UK for me has always been a place that I have wanted to go to due to the cultural references that uh, I have been reading and coming across while growing up, whether it is uh, Harry Potter stuff and things like that. I'm also very keen to visit the museums and learn about the history, um, interact with people from other Commonwealth countries and their experiences, and bring all of that knowledge and widen my intersectional understanding and come back to India and apply those approaches here.
Excellent. That's very good. So, what are the goals? Where do you want to see yourself in the next 5 years, and then in the next 25 years once you have completed your second master's in the UK?
Right. My short-term goal is to work with organizations that are engaged in policy development and advocacy in India. I believe that these function at a very crucial juncture in developing countries like India, because on one hand, you have the government and the bureaucracy and a lot of red tape that is associated with it. And on the other hand, you have your beneficiaries who are at the lowest rung. So I'm talking about your most disadvantaged beneficiary of a certain policy. And there is a lot of gap in between the two of them. Organizations that work in development and advocacy can help by bridging that gap. They work with communities and they also work with local governments or bureaucracies or national governments. They are able to design smaller scale programs and gather evidence for the same and pitch it for implementation at a larger scale. So in a way, for me, I believe it will provide a little more freedom than, say, working directly with a government or a very public service oriented job would. It would give me a little more freedom to navigate the bureaucracy, collaborate with both ends of the spectrum, access the larger civil society, utilize my networks in the media to also broadcast the work that is being done. and enhance again my understanding of the ground realities of what people actually want and need to battle sexual violence and gender discrimination. So in the short term, this is the sort of work I want to do. In the longer term, I want to work with international development organizations with operations in India, such as Gender at Work, UN Women, so that I can utilize the greater resource to make a larger impact in India. For example, Gender at Work has programs that encourage grassroots feminist leaderships in several states in the country. So that is, and of course, that has a domino effect on educating women and girls about their rights, about having them participate in the social and democratic process even further, and which again leads to them speaking up about sexual violence and gender discrimination and claiming the space that they're due. So that is the sort of work that I'm really interested in. In the long term, I want to design the programs and interventions that enable safe environments, that enable feminist leadership, that enable women and girls to speak their mind and have their space in the society.
Very good. And I didn't see a lot of writing. You will definitely continue writing, right?
Definitely, absolutely. Even now, as a journalist with the Newsnet, we often reach out to people in the policy and development sector to write articles about issues that their expertise is in, and that is something that I absolutely want to continue doing. Writing is my first love, and there is no way that I want to give it up.
Very good. Since we have little time, the following questions that I'm going to ask, kindly answer them very shortly in 1 or 2 sentences. So because there are so much going on in your plans for the short and long term, can you please shortly tell me what is your vision? What do you want to do for the country in 1 sentence? Where do you want to see your impact in the society?
I think my vision is to have every woman and every gender minority have access and opportunity to a safe and enabling working environment that is free from sexual violence, that is free from discrimination.
That's very good.
Yes.
Thank you. And what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses?
My greatest strength, I believe, is loyalty and consistency. I say that because the issues that I have been committed to be very honest, they do take a toll sometimes, especially being a woman. Sometimes you think about the expanse of and the prevalence of gender discrimination and violence, and it's overwhelming. But I think my loyalty and commitment to these issues and consistency in doing the work that I've been doing is what's kept me going and what will keep me going. My biggest weakness, perhaps, is that I tend to take up too much sometimes. I get a little overwhelmed with how many elements are there to a problem, and sometimes have difficulty in focusing it. Like I said, I have a breadth of knowledge. What I require now is depth, which is why I'm also pursuing a master's in public policy. So I've been working on it, and I will continue to work on it during my course and even after that, to be able to have focus while having a bird's eye view of the different connected issues, so that I'm able to make the most impact.
Do you have a role model? And if yes, why you have chosen him or her?
Okay, I've had multiple role models at different points in my life. At the current point in my life, I don't really subscribe to the idea of a role model too much, because I don't think we need to put a person on a pedestal, um, because then we stop seeing their flaws. And I think true learning and true understanding is seeing anyone and anything as a whole. But I have had a few role models while growing up. One of them has been President APJ Abdul Kalam. He passed away a few years ago. I really admired his humility and simplicity and approachability, despite the feats that he had achieved. And that is something I hope to emulate. Currently, and in the recent past, my role models have been my mother, because I see how much she's developed coming from a small town in India with very little access to intellectual discourses. And I see where she is now. She's somebody I speak to very frankly about the Me Too movement, about gender issues. And this is not something that a lot of people coming from conservative Indian families can do. I also really admire my own editor-in-chief, Tanya Rajendran, who's disrupted the media industry in a lot of ways, like bringing the focus to South India, um, having a feminist organization, and showing that this works and people do want to read this, and our perspectives matter. These are the people that I've really admired.
Thank you very much. This is the end of today's interview. If you have any question, please ask. Otherwise, we will call it the day.
No, I think this was really helpful. Any feedback that you have, I look forward to that.
Thank you very much. In the actual interview, you will be also asked if you have any questions. That's why I always put it at the end.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So we have like 7 minutes, and I would like to provide as much feedback as I can. There were a lot of good points, obviously. Your English is very good. I know most of you are from India. You are speaking very good English. And you speak clearly. That's another good point, because, of course, you are a journalist. And you know what you want. That's another good thing. You are very experienced person. You just because whatever you say, and I haven't read your essays, but I'm pretty sure whatever you have written in your essays, they are true. And you have even bigger or even stronger background. You have very in-depth knowledge of your field, what you have studied and what you have worked for, and there is a lot to say. And a person like, even if I pretend myself being in your shoes, when I face these type of questions, it will be difficult to answer, because you have a lot of background and a lot of experience to explain. But there are a few things that needs to be corrected, maybe, or thought about before the actual interview. So I start from the beginning. You talked about writing and reading, and then I asked you about what have you written or are they published. The reason why I asked you about your articles being published, because it wasn't very clear. So I encourage you in your introduction. Your introduction in the beginning was very good, because it was short and to the point. I think it's good to mention that you are writing. So in your introduction, you should clear it so that there is no question. Are you writing for who and what happens? Everybody says I'm writing, correct? Even like I have written only a few articles that are published, but I have written like hundreds of articles that are, sitting under my desk. And even if I brag about it, it doesn't make sense, because it's like, who cares, right? But people only care about the few that are published. And yours, it's also important that you mention that they are all published. And I asked you about, because whenever people brag about some things in the interview, the panel will ask to see if he or she is lying or telling the truth. And then I asked you about the book. You started to explain a book, which is good, but you don't have to go into in depth about what the book is about, because you have a very limited time and you should take the time for other important things. Think about it. Like if you have 30 minutes, should you talk about a book or should you talk about yourself? Definitely about yourself.
Right. Right.
And I asked you questions about your career plan, about your educational background. You didn't give me a lot of dates or numbers, okay? So please say that I started my undergraduate degree in 2000X and I started my master's degree in 2000X and I graduated, or you either say the beginning or end. For undergraduate, we have to say beginning and end because it's like sometimes 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but masters, it's okay. You just say, I had my master's in 2018, 19. And the same problem with when I asked the question regarding your career, you didn't give me dates, which year. You don't have to say the date of the day or month, but at least the year. Like I started working at News Minute in 2017 until now, and I'm currently working.
Right.
And please tell your positions as well, okay? You can say, well, I started working at the News Minute as an editor and then senior editor and now other things, and now I'm an associate editor or anything. It's better because it shows that you started and then you grew up and now you are associate editor. I asked you about a difference between a leader and a manager because we were talking about work and career. You, before answering directly my question, you kind of explained another thing as well, a case about, it was a case that it doesn't answer my question. I think it was about child sexual abuse or something. So be careful with your time and try to answer. So one trick I always tell in my paid mentorship program, because it's like 2 hours mostly, and I have enough time to explain everything. The way I say is to answer a question is, for example, if I ask you, please talk about leadership, and you say, well, my leadership skills, you have to say the word that was asked in your first sentence. In the first sentence, don't put it for the last sentences, because I have seen, I will come to other examples, you have had the same kind of answer. That, you know, if I ask you a question about, and then you explain something else, and then after 10 sentences, you come back to that keyword that I'm looking for, then I say, okay, so what were you talking until now, right? That's the point.
Yeah.
I asked you about Chevening network. Your answer was very good. And then at the end, you said, what I bring to Chevening. Okay, so tell this word or start your answer, what I bring to Chevening network, it is blah, blah, blah. This is the good approach. You answered it very good, but from my perspective, it was the opposite way. You started from the end and come to the beginning. And your answers were, most of them, they were very long, especially when it came to networking and your leadership and manager versus leader. You know, you should be as specific and as short as possible. Your answers regarding the universities, why you have chosen these universities, they were very good. I don't see any problem with them. You can keep it up, and it's also very good that you emphasize that you already got a conditional offer or unconditional from Oxford.
A conditional one. Yeah,
that's great. So it's good that you mentioned it, okay, in the beginning, and I noted it, so that's why I didn't ask again. And then short-term and long-term goals. You gave too much information about everything before answering my question. Okay. And then after a very long time, you came to the word, okay, my short-term goals. And then your long-term goals were very little. You know, because when you explain about a short and long term, I expect you spend the same amount of time explaining your short term and long term goals. And sometimes long term goals require more time because, well, it's long term goals, correct? So you will watch the video and then you will see.
Yes.
Okay. And weakness and strengths. Very good answer. Role model, good answer. And yeah, so overall, these were key points that for me as like interviewer, I consider to, you know, improve it. Overall, I would say you are amazing. Everything is amazing. The only thing you need to do is incorporate these comments and be specific, be like shorter sentences, and avoid giving extra examples out of context. And off you go. Everything seems great, and I am pretty sure you will shine in the interview.
Thank you so much. This was really, really helpful. Thank you for taking out the time to do this, giving feedback. While speaking also, I could tell some of the things you pointed out. I could also tell that, okay, this is going somewhere where it shouldn't go. I need to come back. So this was really helpful. Yeah,
I hope it
this
helps.
was really helpful.
Yeah, I hope it helps. And the reason why we are having this, and in the beginning you were, because you are a journalist, of course, overall you were very good. In the beginning you were a little bit nervous, but you enjoyed it once you started to talk about your career plan and everything. So in the actual interview, I want you to enjoy right from the beginning. And also one thing I liked when I asked, how did you start this field or education, I think, and then you said, well, it started in a funny way. Is that so? You said something like that, right?
Yeah,
and it's
I did.
Good
I did.
Because from a psychological point of view, I want to tell you, and also for the viewers, if we talk with each other and you bring up funny words, it of course make the other party be funny and smile, right? If you say a bad thing or an emotional thing, I get emotional, right? So that is how we control the interview in a way. So I like that. So keep that, you know, saying like funny and good words, of course. Don't be too funny, but like funny, and smile like you do like now. That's very good, because if I see somebody smiling at me, I do smile, of course, and I will be happy to continue. So overall, I think everything is excellent, and we have little time left for others. I don't want to take other people's time now. Thank you very much. Please keep me updated regarding your interview, and if you wanted to share some of the questions, and once you are you get the award, please just let me know. I will be happy to see the people I have been talking are shining, and I hope to see you one day in person.